The Formula One race cars are back, and the Dutch Grand Prix has some cool stories we should talk about. From the weather report that could mess up everyone's plans to new rules by the racing officials to make drivers stop twice for new tires. What does Zandvoort have waiting for us in one of its newest races? And more importantly, how will the two main championship fighters do after the Dutch GP after Norris made his big statement? Formula One is finally back after a long 3-week break. And when we go to Zandvoort, there's one thing we always need to remember: the rain. It looks like the weather is going to be pretty wet, with chances of rain being around 80% during all 3 days of racing near the North Sea. Of course, there will be different wind speeds and temperatures, with Saturday having the strongest winds of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. But overall, these conditions are always fun to watch during a race weekend. They bring out the best in the drivers. But for that to happen, the racing officials need to let them race and not mess up again like they did in Belgium. It's very likely to be different here because rain is expected throughout the entire weekend. And in Belgium, everyone thought the rain would stop. However, teams believed they would race on the wet track, which barely happened. Either way, it would be big pressure that the racing officials would have to deal with and, of course, handle what the drivers and fans expect in terms of how much rain is considered safe to race in. It's not just the rain. When you have this mix of rain and wind, you can barely see anything. And then it's very likely that there will be delays in the whole racing process. So that's the first thing that should keep us watching closely. But what about the rule change in general? Zandvoort is a track that is really hard on the tires because it has so many corners. But if the track temperatures are low, many would try to do the one-stop strategy. This has been the safest pit stop plan for a long time, and the racing officials have had some hard times trying to get teams to do the two-stop strategy, which gives more drama and planning. So for this year, along with Pirelli, a decision was made to raise the speed limit in the pit lane from 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. When talking about it in an official statement about this rule change, Pirelli wrote, "Another step in this direction comes from the racing officials' decision to increase the pit lane speed limit from 60 to 80 kilometers per hour, which reduces the time it takes for a pit stop. According to computer predictions from the teams, the one stop is still fastest, partly because passing other cars is really hard at Zandvoort, with very few straight sections except for the main one, combined with the fact the whole track is pretty narrow. The sad part about Zandvoort is that this is one of the last times we'll race here. After 26, the track's contract with F1 ends because of money problems, but it's very likely that the simple growth of F1 cars has made it a bit hard to race here. Although traditional racetracks are slowly but surely disappearing, I don't think there's anything we can do to stop that. What we can do when it comes to Zandvoort is expect some action from NASCAR and IndyCar 500. Racing series that have shown interest in racing here if they were to visit Europe. But let's be a little more positive about the Dutch GP. They have a home hero to cheer for, and one that's won 3 times out of 4 tries since the track came back in 2021. The situation with Verstappen and Red Bull, however, is not looking very good right now. The McLarens are way ahead, and the upgrades on the RB21 car are simply not working. It also puts the second driver's seat in danger because now the team finds itself in a very tough spot. They need to score points with both of their cars so they don't fall down to the middle teams. I don't think Max is enough to keep Red Bull in the top 3, which you can see from the current standings. And if this trend continues in 2026, then we'll have tons of talks about Max's future with the Austrian team. Still, there's a big confidence boost in Lando Norris that he's in the best shape he's ever been in so far. And with him winning 3 of the last 4 races, I really believe that the momentum is on his side. Of course, the conditions in Zandvoort are set to make the race a bit harder for him, but it's going to be the same for everyone. Calm seas never made a skilled sailor. So Norris needs to prove that he has the championship mindset in him. Having your teammate as the main competitor is very hard to deal with because both of you are racing in the same car. But either way, Norris feels like he's up to the challenge, and he'll continue with the winning streak that he's been on ever since the Canadian GP mistake. Going deeper into this, he said, "Nothing makes my life feel different. It's just how ready you are for this moment and this battle. From a racing side, I've learned a lot of things. You're just more ready for any situation. I feel now more like the most complete driver I've ever been. It doesn't necessarily make it easier. You're still racing the best drivers in the world, but you're just more ready. And I think sometimes that just lets you show more of what you can do. Even though the Drivers' Championship has come down to these two drivers only, it doesn't mean other racers won't be trying to win races. Andrea Stella is very happy to have both of his drivers up there fighting for the championship, but at the end of the day, he knows that Ferrari will be a bigger threat in the second half of the season. Starting from Zandvoort onwards, yes, to say that Leclerc and Hamilton have any chance of fighting up at the top is always going to be questionable because it's Ferrari that we're talking about. But the Monaco driver did take the top starting position in Hungary. If it wasn't for the car problems, he would have likely gotten on the podium, or maybe even fought for the race win, which is why Stella believes that we're going to see a different version of Ferrari in the rest of the season. Adding more to this, Andrea said, "I'm not surprised by Ferrari's pole position in Hungary, because they have been competitive over the last few races. They were competitive in the dry conditions in Silverstone, and they were competitive in Belgium. I think they are going to be a contender for victories for the rest of the season. Definitely, any time we are racing for the second part of the season, we would have to keep in mind that in qualifying and in the race, we would have to deal with Ferrari. And the never-ending question, what about the second seat of Red Bull? Yuki Tsunoda will be under pressure yet again, as he knows that drivers like Liam Lawson and even Alex Palou are now ready to take his seat if he fails to improve in 2025. Although most people believe that he is going to be replaced after 2025. Laurent Mekies decided to put a stop to these talks and set the priorities straight. The goal is to give Yuki what he needs to get his good form back with Red Bull. If he fails to do that, then Red Bull are going to look at their options. And when going deeper into this, the newly appointed team boss of Red Bull said the priority is to give Yuki what he needs to perform well. With regard to the second seat, that's where the priority is. It's what the team is focused on. They have been trying that for a number of races now. We are trying to find ways together to make another step forward. Belgium was very positive. Certainly from that point of view, Hungary was a tricky weekend overall. So it's probably a bit harder to judge, but there is no reason why Yuki's performance cannot be what we have seen in the past. And that's what we are focused on right now. All of this should be enough to keep us excited throughout the entire weekend. What we do hope is that the rain won't be pouring down hard and won't ruin racing in general, because it's very likely that we won't see the blue-striped tires being used for these conditions. In general, Zandvoort never disappoints. And with all this in mind, what do you think about the upcoming race in the Netherlands? And more importantly, who do you think would be the leader in the Drivers' Championship after this race? Let us know in the comments below.